she yelled in the hallway, not behind closed doors or in secret. A royal guard passed by her with her most expensive necklace in his hand. There was no explanation and no apology. The monarch just told me to bring it to my sister. But why would Charles tell a royal guard to take her necklace and give it to Anne? Hit the subscribe button before we tell you what was said that shocked everyone in the palace. Click the bell symbol and leave a comment telling us where in the world you're watching from. It wasn't about jewelry, though. It was about a line finally being drawn, and the one man who didn't step around it. She only wore it once, during the memorial service where mourning was meant to be more important than jewelry. The blaze of the Hannavverian, 3 rubies that are blood crimson, a Victorian platinum mount with a 44-carat orange diamond that hadn't been seen in public since before the war. For 70 years, the Queen never wore it. It stayed in the vault, locked, untouched, and safe until Camilla decided it was hers to take, and when the king eventually sent someone to get it back. When the royal guard came into her private wing and unlocked Case 7, she didn't simply complain, she yelled, "Before we tell you what the guard said that made her stop talking, make sure you have the bell symbol switched on, and leave a comment telling us where in the world you are watching from." This wasn't about a necklace, though. It was about what happens when legacy and ownership become mixed together, and the one man who wouldn't let her keep acting like she was. The envelope arrived before morning. Sergeant Rhys Cater had just completed buttoning the top button of his ceremonial coat when the captain of the East Watch walked into the changing wing. There was no knock or welcome, only a hand lifted with a cream-colored envelope with the royal insignia pressed into wax. The captain said in a low voice, "Verbal order, straight from His Majesty. Do it right now." Rhys took the envelope without saying anything. He had learned how to read the weight of quiet after 12 years in the Coldstream Guard. If a command went around the registry completely, it wasn't about being careful. It was about power. With his thumb, he shattered the seal. The paper inside was thick and expensive, like the sort Charles kept in his private study. There was no doubt about the handwriting. Small, exact, and tilted a little to the left. Getting the escort back, East Wing, 7. Jewelry case, 1 thing. Recipient, Princess Royal. There is no signature and no timestamp. There was no mention of the Queen Consort. Just a command that seemed more like a correction than a policy. Rhys gently folded the note and put it in the pocket of his coat. Then he fixed his gloves, made sure his belt was straight, and without saying a word he turned toward the East Wing. His boots hit the stone floor in a steady beat, not too fast or too slow, simply with purpose. At this hour, the hallways were still dark, with just the faint light of security lamps along the archway lighting them up. The air smelt like furniture polish and ancient stone, which is the same smell that Windsor has had for hundreds of years. It was chilly down here, always has been. It was as if the walls were holding on to winter. He passed 2 helpers who were moving swiftly in the other direction. Neither of them looked at each other. One of them, a woman in her 50s who had worked in royal logistics for a long time, gave him a glance that wasn't curious. It was sad. "Is it about the sale?" Someone in the gallery stairwell whispered. Another voice made them quiet right away. Ryuan didn't stop. He didn't say anything. That wasn't what he was supposed to do. As soon as the young corporal on duty saw him at the vestibule entrance to the East Wing vault, he stood up straight. His gaze went to the clearance sign that was attached on Rhys's lapel, the one that broke almost all the rules in the building. The corporal responded quietly, "No one briefed us, sir. You weren't supposed to get a briefing." Ryuan typed in his access code and waited. There was a low mechanical groan as the lock turned, and then it let go with a faint pneumatic hiss. The steel door swung open, and frigid air rushed out like breath from a grave. He went inside. There were just 4 walls in the space, and each one was lined with glass cases that were lighted and kept at a comfortable temperature. Camilla's private collection had always been too showy. The floors were made of polished marble, the showcases had mirrors on the backs, and the pedestals were made of velvet, which made the store look more like a boutique than a vault. But even with all the lights and the show, it still seemed like what it was, a room full of things that weren't hers. Rhys saw the gaps as he went further inside. Case 3 is empty. The sign still said, Empress Marie Fodorova, Emerald, Peru, 1890. Case 5 was empty except for 1 earring that was left behind. Its mate probably got lost in transit. He had been in this vault twice before, both times when the Queen was alive. Back then, every case was full, and every piece was accounted for. Now it looked like a mouth with missing teeth. Jewelry case 7 stood along the far wall, nestled between two ornate sconces that hadn't been lit in months. Ree crossed the floor without hesitation, his reflection trailing across the glass like a ghost. He pressed his clearance token to the biometric panel and entered the override code, an alphanumeric sequence assigned only to royal seizure operations. Very few guards were ever trusted to use it. Fewer still ever needed to. The lock disengaged, the case hissed as the temperature seal broke, and the glass lid rose slowly on hydraulic arms. Inside, resting on ivory velvet, was the necklace, the Hannavverian Flame. Even in the cold lead glow, it shimmered with an intensity that felt wrong in a vault. 3 center-cut rubies arranged in a drop-tier pattern, each one the size of a thumbnail, and at the throat, a 44-carat blood orange diamond that caught light like a warning. Camila had worn it only once. Ree remembered the moment clearly, the platinum memorial just days after the Queen's funeral. The dress had been black, the shoulders bare, and the necklace resting on her collarbone like a statement no one had asked her to make. It had drawn attention, uncomfortable attention, photographs that felt less like tribute and more like claims-taking. Some said it was bold, others said it was a mistake. Today it was neither. Today it was evidence. Ree reached in carefully and lifted the necklace by the neck loop, never touching the stones directly. The platinum was still faintly warm, like it had been handled recently. He laid it onto the velvet-lined retrieval tray he'd brought from the guard station, then closed the case with a soft click. The seal re-engaged, the glass fogged slightly as the humidity recalibrated. He turned to sign the conservation ledger mounted on the wall beside the case. His pen scratched once across the logbook, and beside the retrieval line, he wrote a single word, ordered. As he clipped the tag and adjusted the padded satchel, he noticed someone standing near the doorway, an aide, senior staff, judging by the Windsor crest on her lapel. She was pale, mouth half open, watching everything like she'd just seen something she wasn't supposed to. "She'll lose her mind," the aide said quietly, not as a warning, as a prediction. Ree doesn't look up. She doesn't have to. He sealed the satchel, adjusted the strap across his chest, and turned toward the exit. Whatever came next would come fast, and if the Queen Consort was already awake, then screaming wouldn't be far behind. She found him before he reached the stairwell. The doors had barely closed behind Ree when her voice came slicing down the corridor like something sharp and unsathed. "That is mine." Sergeant Rhys Keider didn't stop walking. He kept his pace steady, measured, formal, as the sound of heels struck the marble floor behind him, gaining with each furious step. "You don't touch private regalia without written clearance." Camilla's voice echoed off the vaulted ceiling. "This isn't some dusty tiara from the archives. Someone gave me that necklace." Ree paused at the next archway, not out of hesitation, out of discipline. He adjusted his grip on the satchel and turned slowly. Camilla was already flushed. One hand clutched the wall for balance. The other gestured wildly toward the satchel hanging from his shoulder. "Are you deaf, Sergeant, or just expendable?" He met her eyes calmly. His voice, when it came, was flat and unbothered, acting under sealed order from His Majesty. "Don't you dare hide behind protocol," she snapped. "You think one old man's mood swing justifies theft?" Rhys didn't blink. "It's not theft. It's reassignment." Camilla scoffed so hard her voice cracked. "That necklace was a royal wedding gift. It's mine. Mine. I've worn it in state photography." "Once," Rhys said. Her eyes narrowed. "Excuse me, you wore it once. At the Platinum Memorial. Not before. Not since. Never catalogued. Never submitted for conservation clearance." He paused, letting the words settle. "Which means it was never yours by royal inventory standards." "You're quoting technicalities," she spat. "No," he said quietly. "I'm following a direct order. You may scream, ma'am, but it won't alter the ledger." Her voice dropped sharper now. "You wouldn't be doing this if I were a man." Rhys exhaled slowly through his nose. "I wouldn't have to." That stopped her, not because she didn't understand, but because she did. The corridor behind them was beginning to fill. A footman slowed near the corner, unsure whether to pass. An aide from the royal kitchens hovered at the archway, holding a tray of unopened envelopes and watching like she'd stumbled into a thunderstorm she couldn't outrun. Then one of the senior stewards, a man in his 60s who'd served under 3 monarchs, stepped forward from the gallery entrance. His voice was steady, measured, but loud enough to carry. The Hannavverian Flame was never registered under the consort's personal collection, he said. It remained under Crown Estate inventory. I processed the Queen's jewelry transfer myself after her passing. Camilla turned sharply. You're out of line. I'm stating record, Mom. The steward didn't flinch. That necklace was archived under Royal Preservation Protocol. Not gifted, not transferred, archived. A murmur rippled through the small crowd. Another aide, younger, nervous, whispered something to the person beside her. Someone near the back shifted uncomfortably. Camilla's face flushed darker. She looked around at the gathering staff, then back at Ree. Her voice dropped sharper now. This is an attack, she hissed. You are undermining the Queen Consort. No, Mom, Ree said without heat. I am enforcing the king. He adjusted the strap across his chest and tightened his jaw just once. Then he spoke slowly and clearly, with a calmness that felt more dangerous than shouting. With respect, Mom. He paused to make sure she was looking him dead in the eyes. I'm getting back what was never really yours. Camila opened her mouth, but for once she couldn't find the words. Her jaw tensed, and the scream that finally came wasn't from anger anymore. It was from fear. Not of Riley, but of whoever had finally dared to send him. She moved to block him right there in the middle of the corridor. Arms wide, back straight, chin high, like she was daring him to physically push past her. Riley stopped exactly 2 paces away. His posture stayed upright. His expression didn't change. Step aside, Mom, he said. Camila's breath hitched with disbelief. You are not walking past me with that necklace. I don't care what Charles wrote down in private. This is my wing, my vault, and that was my birthright. There were people in the hallway behind them now. A few aides had gathered around the vestibule entrance and were observing in silence. A steward held a tablet and appeared to read, looking up every few seconds. Somewhere along the marble path, delicate footfalls stopped and then turned back, as if the weight of the air itself had worn them down. Camila snapped, You're going too far. When this gets to Parliament, they won't care how well you followed the rules. Reese tilted his head a little. With all due respect, Mom, this isn't a discussion. It's the law. She went forward again, pointing her finger at the bag. That necklace is jewelry fit for a queen. There are rules, processes, and committees. Reese's voice went down a half octave. When you sold the Queen's sapphire suite, you got around them. Camila's eyes opened just a little, which was enough to make the facade flicker. That was cleared through the company's own channels. She barked. So why did it show up in a catalog for an auction house in Geneva 6 weeks later? The hallway became quiet. One of the helpers took a step back. Another person gazed at the ground. Camila's voice became weak. You don't have any proof of that. Maison Laurent Rudon, lot 4761. Ree didn't move. 14 items were sold for slightly under $2 million without a name. He stopped and said, Sterling. When a London merchant saw the guardmaker's marks, the Queen's special secretary marked the catalog. Camila opened her mouth and then shut it. From behind them, the senior steward said again, It was never okay for anyone else to sell Her Majesty's sapphires. No one asked the committee. No one told the archivist. And the sale was finished before anyone in the house knew they were gone. Camila muttered, That's not true, but there was no strength behind it. It's public record, Mom, the steward remarked gently, logged by the auction house under Swiss transparency standards. Ree took a breath, and the buyer was not known. But the payment went through a shell account that could be traced back to a holding company in your daughter's name. Silence. Everyone in the hallway felt the weight of it. Camila finally responded, You don't get to make those accusations. Her voice was cracking. Ree answered, I'm not. He did, Your Majesty. I'm just holding the package. She lunged, not to grasp it, but to physically block the way again. Her voice was shaking now, but not because she was angry. It was something worse. Understanding. She said this was treason. You are betraying the crown. Ree didn't move. His voice was calm and steady, and it cut through the noise more than any shout. No. Mom, I'm keeping it safe. One of Camilla's personal assistants, a woman in her 40s who had been with her since the wedding, stepped forward then, shaking her voice but standing her ground. She promptly stated that the Queen Consort had every right to look at family heirlooms. Before she became queen, she had been married to the monarch for 17 years. She has earned it. Earned. Ree looked at her. Not angry, just honest. The late queen got that jewelry for carrying the throne for 70 years. by serving through war, controversy, and grief, and never selling her mother's jewelry to pay for a vacation house. The helper's face turned white. She took a step back. Camilla's face changed. "Now give it back." That's when Rhys stepped up. One step at a time, on purpose, and with control. In the quiet, the sound of his heel hitting the marble seemed like thunder. "Step aside," he urged again, this time louder but not shouting. "I've seen less panic in Helmand Province than in this hallway." The people watching murmured. Camilla remained there, getting angrier and angrier, her chest heaving and her fingers shaking at her sides, but she didn't move. She couldn't, because no matter how many titles she had, how loud she was, or how many stones she had slung over her collarbone like armor, she couldn't outrank the truth, and the guard wasn't here to fight. He was here to take it. Before he even got there, the corridor got chilly. Rhys had not moved. Camilla was still in the middle of another rant about royal shame and inheritance rights, when the quiet creak of polished leather echoed down the marble steps behind them, turning every head. King Charles was on the landing above. There was no pomp or escort. He merely had a single folder of documents under his arm and a look on his face that made the walls quiet. Camilla turned to him like a woman who was about to drown. "Charles, he's getting the Hannavverian." The last sentence made her voice break. Her voice, which used to be commanding, now sounded desperate. Charles didn't move. He said yes, because it's the last one. "Be quiet." Camilla blinked. "What?" Charles slowly walked down the stairs, taking his time with each step, the way someone who already knew how things would end might stroll. His sneakers didn't make any noise, but they felt heavier than anything Rhys had carried all morning. He remarked coldly, "You sold your mother-in-law's sapphire suite." Without telling the committee, without consulting them, and without letting them know about the inventory, a private courier and a silent auction in Geneva. He had reached the last step. His eyes didn't move. "Don't act like this one is more important." Camilla's mouth dropped open. "I was told that the value was higher than expected." She managed poorly. Charles's jaw got tight. "Someone advised you to halt." He raised the folder a little. "There are 3 letters here. One letter is from the Lord Chamberlain, one is from the Royal Collection Trust, and one is from Princess Anne." He didn't open it. "All of them nicely asking you to stop taking things out of the archived inventory. People weren't using those items." Charles cut in, his voice getting colder. "They weren't being sold. My mom didn't wear the sapphires in her last years since arthritis made it hard for her to open and close them. Not because she wanted them sold at auction to pay for your daughter's home improvements." The accusation hovered in the air like smoke. Camilla's face turned white. "That's not how the payment trace is recorded." Now Charles's voice sounded sharp. "Swiss laws about transparency say that buyers must reveal their identity after 18 months. In February, Laura's shell firm got a name." He moved forward one more time. "You turned inheritance into inventory," Charles replied, his voice flat and definitive. "You made legacy something that could be negotiated. It won't happen again." Repo didn't say anything. He just stood there with his shoulders straight and his bag firmly in his hand. He didn't have to justify himself. The king had done it for him. At last Charles stared at him. "She got a call from Sergeant." "Yes, sir." "Go ahead. Give it to my sister." Camilla stepped forward, shaking with something worse than anger now. "You coward. You're making me feel bad." Charles didn't say anything. Not to her, and not to anybody else. He slowly turned around, without saying a word, and started to walk away. Camilla yelled again. This time it wasn't for show. It was real, harsh, piercing, and guttural, like someone realizing too late that the ground beneath them had already fallen. Darius changed how he was standing. He didn't pay attention to her. He didn't flinch at her anger because nothing she said could be more important than what he had just spoken. The only sound louder than her yelling now was the stillness of a king who had ceased defending her. She didn't move until Charles was out of sight. Camilla didn't move from the middle of the hallway until the last rustle of his coat faded away in the upper hallway. But it wasn't giving up. It was a gradual, hesitant recoil, like someone who wasn't sure if they had just lost control or been betrayed. She let her hands fall to her sides. Her shoulders drooped. She appeared smaller now, not humiliated, just naked. Rhys didn't stop. He strolled right by her without even looking at her. The velvet-lined bag seemed like it was carrying something far heavier than jewels. His boots hit the marble softly, one stride at a time. Clear, steady, and calm. Not drama, but discipline. Camila sat still, her eyes burning holes in his back. "This isn't over," she said in a low voice. Rhys didn't stop. As he walked by, the personnel moved out of his way, some swiftly stepping aside and others just standing there and watching. No one said anything, and not a single footman or aide moved to stop them. Some of them had presumably touched the jewelry during fittings. Some people probably helped her get it ready for the photo shoot, but no one in the hall was willing to stand between the king's command and the man who was carrying it out. About halfway down the stretch, a steward muttered just loud enough for Rhys to hear, "She'll come after his commission." Rhys didn't look up. He didn't even move his shoulders. "Let her," he responded in a calm voice. He didn't need others to clap for him. He didn't need anyone to agree with him. And he didn't need the approval of people who had spent their whole lives orbiting power like it was unquestionable. The guard didn't follow protocol at this point in time. He stood for something less common, a correction. That kind of walk didn't have to be noisy. It just needed to go on without stopping. No one was watching the door to Princess Anne's study. It didn't have to be. Sergeant Rhys Calder got there right after the cathedral bell rang for the first time. He stopped once before the door, not because he was unsure, but out of respect. Then he knocked twice on the strong oak. "Come in," said the voice. He went inside. The chamber was warm and silent, with dark wood paneling and floor-to-ceiling bookcases. It had the weight of 100 years of statecraft without ever needing to gloat about it. There were no aides, no noise, and only one table at the far end. The Princess Royal was already waiting behind it, standing up. Anne didn't ask any questions. She just watched as Rhys walked across the room with the velvet-lined bag and set it down gently on the blotter in front of her. He opened the lid by unhooking the clasps. The Hannavverian Flame lit up right away. The pale velvet looked great with the rich crimson. It sought to get people's attention even when it was quiet. Anne looked at it, and then at Rhys. Her voice was hoarse. Even. Did she yell? Rhys didn't smile enough to rouse up the guard. Anne nodded slowly, almost without realizing it. Not happy, just confirmed. She reached for the ledger on her right that had the new assignments in it. As she scrawled a single line below the entry number, the pen clicked lightly in her hand. No speech, no ceremony, just routine. After that, she signed it. Anne. No title, no frills. She stopped writing and looked up at Rhys. She remarked softly that her mother wore this once, when she was still simply Elizabeth, for her engagement portrait before the wedding. Anne looked back to the necklace. She said it made her feel like she was borrowing someone else's life, so she never wore it again. Rhys didn't say anything. She just listened. She kept it because it reminded her of what she used to be before she had to do her duty. Anne shut the ledger and told me to send it to her, not as jewelry, but as proof that we were all someone else once. Then she looked at him all the way. Camilla never got that. She thought they were just rocks. Rhys saw her close the satchel, relock the box, and put it in a drawer behind her that didn't have a label. She didn't try it on or look at it. She didn't even touch the gems with her hands. Her tone had changed just a little when she turned back. Something like thankfulness in a uniform. "Thanks, Sergeant." Rhys nodded quickly. "In the morning you'll need a guard to lock the registry. I'll check in at dawn." Anne stopped for a moment, then nodded once. That was enough. They didn't say anything else. They didn't have to because the jewelry wasn't the actual thing. The weight of judgment had been given to that room. Princess Anne carried it without a second thought. Rhys Calder had always liked the West Corridor best. It was calmer, wider, and less formal. Staff used it more than dignitaries. It was the kind of hallway where no one posed, no one performed, and nothing was spoken unless it had to be. That was just what he needed right now. He walked by a junior guard near the gallery arch. The guard was only 20, had big eyes, and was standing a little too straight as Rhys got closer. "Sir," the boy said quickly, "did she hit you?" Rhys didn't slow down, just with sound. The young guard turned red and glanced away, but then he called out to him softly. "My grandmother worked for Queen Elizabeth in the household staff for 34 years. He stopped. "She would have been proud of what you did today, sir." Rhys stopped for a second. He didn't look around, but his shoulders straightened a little, and when he spoke, his voice was softer than before. "Then she taught you well." He kept walking, his feet still solid, his shoulders still square, and his mind was already cleansing itself of the sounds from earlier. The king had said something. The necklace had been given to someone else. He had finished his part, but when he rounded the last bend near the barracks wing, he saw her again. Camilla was alone now, with no help, no shadow crew, and only one person sitting on the window bench under one of the large arched panes that looked out over the garden. She had her hands tightly curled in her lap, and her face was unreadable. It wasn't soft or broken, just bitter. As Ree walked by, she turned her head. "You think this makes you noble?" she replied, her voice low but piercing. He didn't pause because he was unsure. He did it without thinking. He glanced at her for the first time that day and actually saw her. "No, Mom," he responded in a calm voice. "Just a guard," she said with a laugh as she shifted her weight. Ree nodded once and said, "You're all just uniforms and orders." "Exactly. That's why we don't scream when we lose." She didn't say anything. Ree didn't wait, though. He turned and walked away, the sound of his boots echoing behind him like punctuation. Some reversals didn't need applause, just stillness. Ray went back to the vault that night, long after the staff had gone to bed and the castle had settled into its old, creaking cadence. He didn't say who he was or write down his entry. He just typed in his access code, slipped inside, and stood in front of jewelry case 7, where the empty velvet cushion was now resting. The lights were muted, set to night mode, and there was a gentle amber glow that barely lit up the glass. He walked cautiously, his boots making no noise on the stone floor, and stopped just short of the case. He stared at it for a long time, the space where the necklace had been, the mark still apparent in the fabric, like a phantom of what had been there for years. He then saw it. Something little and folded had dropped on the floor of the display case, right below where the necklace had been. He gently and slowly opened the environmental seal with a key and reached inside. His fingers wrapped around a little square of cream-colored paper. He opened it up slowly. It was a handwritten message with old ink that had faded around the corners. The handwriting was unmistakable. It was slanted, elegant, and very neat for Anne. "Not before she's ready." It just said, Ree stayed there for a long time, holding the paper in his hand and feeling the weight of what he'd preserved without ever knowing it was there. It wasn't just about the necklace. It was about every little thing the Queen had planned to do. Things that couldn't be borrowed, replaced, or claimed by anyone who desired them. He carefully folded the note and put it back in the case, making sure it was tucked into the corner where it wouldn't be disturbed again. Then he sealed the glass again, checked the humidity one last time, and stepped back. The environmental controls started to hum again. The empty cabinet stayed still again, keeping its secrets safe. Ree turned around and walked out of the room. He still remembers what the Queen said. When she's ready, not before. Because policy doesn't always solve problems. Some things get sorted out when the people who were supposed to defend them eventually recall what they were standing in front of, and this time they did. Should Queen Camilla have been able to keep it, or did King Charles finally get it right? Did the Royal Guard just do what they were told, or did they stand for anything more? Hit the like button if you think memory isn't for sale. Turn on the bell symbol to subscribe. Send this to someone who still recalls how dignified the late Queen was. And we'll see you again tomorrow at the same time, right?